Have you ever tried to lift something really heavy by yourself, knowing that you probably couldn't do it, but you tried anyways? I know that feeling all too well. Before ministry, I worked in construction, and there were plenty of times that I'd see something really heavy, and I would just pick it up, and I would just try to lift it. Sometimes I got lucky, and I was okay, and sometimes I was struggling. But did it because I was hoping that people around me would see me and think, man, John is crushing it. Look at him. How can he even lift that thing with those flimsy arms? But really, it wasn't about lifting it. It was about looking good doing it. Like this one day on the job site, there was this massive beam, almost like an oversized railroad tie. And I thought, I don't need any help. I'm just going to pick this thing up and I'm going to go for it. So I pick it up and I'm carrying it and I'm actually struggling, trying not to look like I'm struggling. Honestly, just hoping that, I'm thinking my coworkers, they could probably see me, my supervisors in my line of sight, they're going to see me and be like, gosh, John is a hard worker. But what happened next definitely wasn't part of the plan. I didn't know the laces on one of my boots was untied, and so I ended up tripping on it. And I started rocking back and forth, and I had this beam on my shoulder, and I looked like a clown riding a unicycle. I was almost there, and then I finally did not catch my balance, and I tripped, and I eat it in front of everyone. I felt like an idiot, just so dumb. Laying there on the floor, when you fall and you just need a second, you just don't want to get up so people can see you. Well, I laid there for a second because I was embarrassed, but also because I had ended up hurting my back and rolling my ankle. And thankfully, it wasn't permanent, but I don't know if you know this, even being out a couple of weeks of work, if you don't work in construction, you don't get paid. You don't get paid. All because I didn't do one simple thing: ask for help. Every time I would lift something heavy, when I needed somebody to help me, I would end up just allowing my pride to get in the way, and I would just go for it myself. And honestly, I ended up getting hurt because of it. We all do that sometimes, right? It doesn't matter who you are or where you're at in life. We try to do things by ourselves, thinking we can do it when we actually really need help. It's easy to buy into the world's message. Just do your own thing. You don't need anybody's help. You control your life. Kind of like that Shia LaBeouf video where he's, yelling over and over, just do it, in front of that green screen. You know what I'm talking about? It's intense and motivating, but that mindset can actually be really misleading. When we try to go head to head with this life alone, thinking we have it all handled, we end up facing challenges by ourselves. And when things go wrong, because they will, we're the ones who feel the pain. We end up experiencing the hurt, the loss. The world doesn't carry those consequences. We carry those consequences. And the reality is that God didn't design for us to live life alone and go at things alone. And reaching out to people isn't weakness. It's actually wisdom. And God's truth reveals this to us. The Bible, it doesn't hide the weaknesses and failures of its heroes. We have a story that shows us that even the absolute best leaders can try to do things on their own. And in doing so, they can actually hurt their impact. Let's look at Moses in this life and death scenario where we can see what can happen if we try to carry the weight alone. In Exodus 17, 8 through 13, it says, the Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands. So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But as soon as they started lowering, the Amalekites were winning. And when Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone, they put it underneath him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side and one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. You know, this passage is powerful because it shows us that even Moses, who God called to lead, couldn't do it alone. He needed help. Aaron and Hur, they stood beside him. They held up his hands when he couldn't keep going. You know, the world, it will tell you to go solo. Do it on your own. But God shows us the power of community and support here. Moses, he needed help to succeed. And he wasn't ashamed to accept it. That's such an important truth for us today. God doesn't expect us to do things by ourselves. He doesn't want us to go at it alone. He puts people in our lives, deliberately puts people in our lives, in front of us, around us, to help us carry the weight. That brings us to our first point. I must be real about my weakness. You know, verse 11, we see that Moses' strength was critical to the Israelites' success in battle, but his strength wasn't limitless. When his hands grew tired, the Amalekites began to gain ground. So this tells us something important. It's not a sign of weakness to admit we're struggling. Even the people God calls to lead, even them, like Moses, experience exhaustion. You know, Paul, he echoes this in 2 Corinthians 12:9, saying, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me." Paul understood this. He understood that he needed to be real about his weakness and that it wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't a bad thing because it's actually the place where God's power shows up. He wanted to experience that. He wanted to sit in his weakness because he wanted to actually experience God's power in those moments. You know, just like Moses had to admit that he couldn't hold his arms up, Paul knew that in his weakness, Christ's strength was made perfect. You know, this is something we all need to remember. We must be real about our weakness. You know, admitting we need help, it's not failure. It's not. It's an invitation. It's an invitation for God to show his strength, his power. And when we pretend to have it all together, when we think we got it all together, we miss out on experiencing God's grace, his grace in deeper ways. In deeper ways. You know, I remember a season in ministry when I tried to carry everything on my own. You know, I believed that it was my job to hold everything together in my role specifically. I thought, you know, I need to do this. You know, there's not enough people to help me. I need to take it on. I didn't want to admit I was struggling with anxiety, feeling spiritually drained, and just flat out overwhelmed. I was barely managing. And when I finally opened up to my mentors, my pastor, a few close friends, they surrounded me in prayer and even actually helped me with some of the work that I needed help with. You know, the relief showed me that it wasn't about the strength, but about letting God work through others that he'd placed in my life. You know, I realized I didn't need to be everything to everyone. Newsflash, John, you're not that important. God fills that role and sends people to help us when we're weak. You know, what I love about Moses in this passage is that he didn't hide his exhaustion, right? He wanted to go up there. He wanted to do it. He wanted to be strong. But at the point where he was exhausted, he didn't hide it. And because he was honest about where he was at, Aaron and Hur could step in and support him. Likewise, when we're honest about our struggles, God often places the right people, not just people around us, but the right people around us to lift us up. You know, in our own lives, we often take on too much, and eventually things start to slip. We start to drop plates, miss deadlines, neglect quality time with our families. But it's a reminder that we're not meant to carry it alone. You know, the moral here is that embracing our limitation isn't weakness. It's an invitation for God's strength and grace. When we let go of the need to handle everything, we welcome the blessings and support God intends to give us. And he gives it through his presence and through others. Our vulnerability, church, our vulnerability becomes a place where God's power shines. We experience his strength and his power when we are vulnerable. I know we don't like that word. I know we don't like to be vulnerable, but that's the fact of it, is that God's power shines in those places, just as Paul mentioned, and in our weakness. That brings us to our second point. I must have the right community around me. Going back to verse 12, when his hands grew tired, Aaron and Hur, they didn't just stand by just waiting for him to say, hey, I need your help, guys. No, they immediately stepped in. They were ready. And they put a stone underneath him, and they physically held his hands up. They provided the support he needed in the moment. They didn't wait. Because God's plan wasn't for Moses to carry it alone, carry the burden, do it on his own. Remember, he asked them to go up the hill with him. Why? Because he knew he was probably going to need his support. In Ecclesiastes 4:9-10, it says, two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. This passage, it paints a clear picture on why community matters. Moses didn't have to ask them for help. Again, they were right there. They were ready to step in. And that's the beauty of having the right people around you. They can see when you're struggling even before we realize that we are struggling. They can see it. And we need those people around us. It's not just about us needing help. This whole thing, it's also about us being the kind of people who are ready to give help. Just like Aaron and Hur didn't wait, he won the battle because he had a community around him that was willing to lift him up without hesitation. Without hesitation. How do you think that they knew what to do? I think that we will not know what's happening around us, and we are afraid to ask. People see us and they jump in. We need to be able to do the same thing. We need to be able to do the same thing for others. And like Moses, we're called to lean on our community and be that support for each other. So here are two questions I'd like you to consider. Who is supporting you right now? Are you letting others hold you up when you're struggling? Are you trying to carry everything on your own? It's not weakness to admit when you need help. God's strength, again, and I will say this over and over if I need to, is made perfect. Perfect. Not like kind of good, not like okay, not like kind of powerful, like perfect in our weakness. Let people in. Let them support you. Keyword let. Let them in. Let them support you. And who are you supporting? Who in your life might be struggling in silence right now, trying to carry things on their own, and maybe they need you to step in and walk alongside them, just like Aaron and Hur did for Moses. I'm a big Anaheim Ducks fan. I love hockey, so can I just say how stoked I am that it's back? I know that everybody's got all their sports going on, but I've just been counting down the days since hockey is back. And I don't care if the Ducks aren't the best team. I love my Ducks. Even in hockey, you have your star player, though. And even they can't win the game on their own. It's not about having people just on the ice with you. It's about having the right team around you. It's not about just being able to do the things on your own. It's about having the people around you that know how to pass the puck, about how to set up plays, and about how to help you and support you when the game is on the line. In life, we all need a team like that. We need people who are with us when things get tough. We need those people who know us well enough to support us, right? Just like in hockey, the right team makes all the difference. It's not just people that we need, it's the right people. And God will give those people to us if we allow him to, if we have eyes to see that. When we're surrounded by the right people, we truly experience the strength and grace. Again, the grace of God, because we experience it through them. Here are 3 ways you can build this type of community. Join a community group. This is huge. This is one of the best ways that you can find people who will know you, encourage you, and walk alongside you. I'm telling you right now, you are going to have the best support system that you could ever have if you are in relationship with the people around you. They need to get to know you. They need to know who you are. You need to know who they are. So you can do that, giving and receiving support. Join a team. Get in the trenches with somebody in ministry. You build lasting relationships when you're in the trenches under fire, under spiritual attack with somebody else who's on the front lines with you. Find a mentor or accountability partner. Having someone who can speak truth into your life, challenge you when you need it, encourage you when you need it. Again, those are the people that you can trust with all of your dirt because you know that they're looking out for you and have your back. They want to see you do well. They want to see you do well in your spiritual life. Watch your families flourish. Just, again, they're not worried about themselves. They're looking out for you. So here's my challenge for you today. 1, be real about your weakness. If you're struggling, don't hide it. Don't run away. Don't carry the weight alone. Let someone in. Reach out to the people God has placed in your life. And be the right community for somebody else. I know we have a lot of things going on in our lives and we're really busy. I get it. But just as we need the support, we need to be able to do that for other people. So be proactive. Be like Aaron and Hur. Go and check in on your people. See how they're doing. They might need you in that moment to just give them something. You may not think that you have the words, but God will give you the words at the right time for your people. Let's go back to that moment earlier where I shared about trying to lift that heavy beam. Again, I was trying to prove that I could do it on my own. But I ended up getting hurt because I didn't ask for help. Plain and simple. Like I said, I've done it before. I've carried heavy things. But it was only a matter of time before I ended up tripping, falling, and getting hurt. I think a lot of us are like that at times. We push through things on our own, thinking we got it under control. But deep down, we know that we're struggling. We know. Just as I was pretending like I wasn't struggling holding that beam. We don't want to be seen as weak. We want to look strong to people, whether it's physically or emotionally. But as we've seen from Moses' story in Exodus, even the greatest leaders, even the strongest people around you, even the people that you think just have it all together, but you have no idea what's going on in their home lives, what's going on in their minds behind the scenes, they are weak too. And they need it. Even they need support. And Moses, he could have tried here's the thing, I want you to hold on to this right here. He could have tried to go up that hill by himself and do it on his own. But what would have happened? He would have failed, and failed miserably. And the Israelites would have been defeated. His strength wasn't enough to carry him through. And when Aaron and Hur came alongside him, they held up his hands, and with their help, Israel won the battle. With the support. Again, with the support, won the battle. And the same is true for us. We can't win our battles on our own. We need people around us who are willing to step in and support when we're too tired to go on. And we need to be real enough to admit that we need that help. I've learned my lesson, and I'm not thrilled. I want you to know this. I'm not thrilled to ask for help. Like, I'm not all of a sudden like, yeah, I'm going to ask for help all the time. No, I still struggle with asking for help. But after that sumo wrestling match with that beam, I've realized that pride, it just holds me back. And it will hold you back. And life is so much smoother when we're able to admit that we need that support and that help from others. So let's be a community that lifts each other up, is honest about our needs, and steps in whenever we're able. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the example of Moses, Aaron, and Hur. God, I pray that we would just be the complete opposite of running away from pride and leaning into our weakness, as Paul mentioned. God, I pray that we would find that power, that we would actually experience your power in taking those moments to acknowledge the fact that, wow, like, God, look what you did when I got out of the way. God, I pray that we would be able to lean into understanding those moments and knowing when to ask for help. Also, God, I pray that we could be like Aaron and Hur and just be able to step in people's lives when we know that they need it. God, I pray that you would just give us the wisdom and the discernment, again, on knowing when to ask for help and also when to give it. God, only then can we know that we're doing exactly what you called us to do. And so, Lord, I just pray that you would put that on our hearts. Again, that you would remove the pride and that we would grow immensely in this area in our lives. It's in your name we pray. Amen.